Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds. There's Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our first guest up today, Ryan Berg, director of the Americas Program and head of the Future of Venezuela Initiative at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Follow him on X at Ryan Berg, PhD.
So, Ryan, thanks for joining us today. So there's a real hot potato going on right now about the Trump administration, Argentina, and currency. And Democrats are calling it a giveaway, but we can't help people with the ACA and so forth. Can you explain to our audience what is going on right now with the currency and the American loan and so forth so they understand what's going on in Argentina?
Well, thanks very much to both of you. It's a pleasure to be on the show. What's important to know about Argentina and why we're focused on Argentina is that Argentina is seen as a strategic ally of the Trump administration. For the first time in a while, there's a very firm, fixed alignment between Argentina and the United States. And so this is an opportunity to really build a closer partnership between the two countries. Right now, President Milei, although he's made lots of changes and great improvement, and Argentina is going through a bit of a rough patch, I think it's fair to say. And he has midterm elections coming up at the end of this month. There's been a run on the currency as part of his rough patch. And the United States, as it's done with other Latin American countries in the past, such as Mexico, is stepping in to provide liquidity in a time of acute need precisely because Milei is a strategic ally of the United States. Now, Treasury Secretary Bessent has been very clear that this is not a bailout. This is support in a time of need for a strategic partner in Latin America, but there will not be a bailout mentality to this $20 billion line of credit. So there will be an ask, I suspect, at some point in the future from the United States to Argentina. And Milei is smart. He understands this. And so the ask may be to put distance between Argentina and China. The ask might be critical minerals, lithium and copper, which Argentina has in droves. It could be other economic asks. It could be some strategic kind of basing arrangement close to the Antarctic and the Patagonia. It could be a number of things. But the point here is this is a line of credit at the moment. It's not a bailout. There will be an ask at some point in the future.
Fantastic. All right, so let's talk to the foreign policy. You know, the world moves constantly, and now we have Venezuela. And before we get going into it, can you explain to our listeners why we're at the point we're at with Venezuela? I mean, since 2014, nearly 8 million Venezuelans have left the country. It's been the largest movement ever in Latin America. Why are we at that point, and how did we get here?
Well, the story really begins with Hugo Chavez in the late 1990s getting elected after first trying to commit a coup as a lieutenant colonel in the Venezuelan armed forces. The populist policies and eventually criminal illicit economies that Venezuela has grown over the years have taken their toll. And Venezuela has lost about 70% or more of its gross domestic product in a little over a decade and a half. It's the largest peacetime economic collapse in world history, according to the International Monetary Fund. There's no war going on in Venezuela. There's no internal conflict. There's no civil conflict of any kind. This is just bad policy, populist politics, and a mentality of a sort of mafia state where not only is the regime there incredibly repressive and committing all sorts of human rights abuses, up to and including crimes against humanity, according to the International Criminal Court, but they don't really have sound economic policies either. Now, the lifeblood of the economic picture in Venezuela has always been oil.
Right.
And for years, the publicly dominated oil sector in Venezuela was always seen as the kiddie, as the pot of money that populist regimes like Chavismo in Venezuela could grab from to engage in particular policies that eventually led to Venezuela's ruin. As Venezuela is going through this period of time where there's this 70% or so decline in GDP, in order to survive, the regime is not only getting more repressive, but it is starting to engage much more tightly with criminal organizations and is making more and more money for state coffers by participating in illicit gold mining, in drug trafficking, in human trafficking, and other types of crimes. And so at some point in about 2018 or 2019, the organization I work at, CSIS, began referring to Venezuela as a criminal regime. The Maduro regime is a criminal regime. We meant that in two senses. Number one, it has a very tight working relationship with some of these criminal organizations that occupy territory within Venezuela. But number two, it derives much of its public financing, much of the money it has to spend on programs and maintain itself in power from criminal activities like drug trafficking.
Mm.
How we've seen pushback in Venezuela. We're talking about a country that, in the relatively recent past was the most prosperous in Latin America. Is there why? I guess I'm a little baffled why we haven't seen more of a popular uprising against the Maduro government and against these regimes.
Well, 8 million people have left.
Yeah,
they're emptying it.
But, at what point when everyone's starving in the streets do you not overthrow this regime?
So 8 million Venezuelans have left, as has been mentioned. That is a pressure release valve for the regime, right? They have fewer mouths to feed. They have fewer people they need to worry about repressing. And in many cases, those individuals who have usually high levels of social and economic capital, they're able to send remittances back to their family members in Venezuela, thus relieving the pressure even further from the Maduro regime. But to step back, I think it's important to mention Venezuelans have done a lot. They have, especially the opposition, those who are politically organized and active in the country, we have asked a lot of them and they have done a lot. Protest in the street, they've gone out in the street. Participate in these elections, and this will be the moment of change. They've participated in those elections. Many people have the scars to prove it. Many people have died in the process. Many people have gone to famous torture centers like El Coide, and they've got the scars or the PTSD or the trauma to prove that they've put their lives on the line for political change in Venezuela. And I think the last straw, frankly, was the 2024 presidential election, which the Biden administration was keen on organizing and had basically marketed as the point of greatest potential change in Venezuela. Vote for the opposition in a freer and fairer election than we've had in some of the past moments in Venezuela, and that will be the theory of change. Guess what? Venezuelans did it. They did what they were asked to do. They went out and voted. They voted for the opposition in a 2-to-1 ratio. They got the what are called the actas, the vote tally sheets from the individual polling centers to actually prove that the regime cheated and made up numbers, and yet they found a way to repress their way out of the problem, drive more opposition and other Venezuelans into exile. And here we are more than a year later with the same regime in power, engaged in the same criminal activities as always. And so I think if you're from the Venezuelan standpoint and also from the U.S. international community standpoint, you've tried everything at this point. The toolkit is well used and well worn, and we may be reaching for that last tool.
Was there an inflection point there with her apparent victory and stolen loss that the U.S., when Biden was president, missed an opportunity to go in there and apply maybe a little bit of hard power at that time and turn this over? Or was this fait accompli once they rigged the polls?
No, I do think that the Biden administration missed some opportunities. I think that they sat back for way too long. They allowed other leftist regimes in the region, the government of Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil, to run negotiations with Maduro to try to negotiate his way out of power peacefully. Maduro kept stringing them along, and in fact, it took 2 months to even get him on a Zoom call to talk about whether he'd be willing to leave. And the Biden administration was happy to let those three countries in a consortium together lead some of these negotiations while we waited for the answer. Meanwhile, we never did any sanctions snapback. We never went to snap back some of those sanctions that we had removed from Venezuela as a kind of incentive for freer and fairer elections in July of 2024. We didn't move those back to the harshest position that they were before the election. So we didn't even go back to the status quo ante before the stolen election. Those were all lost opportunities, in my opinion, such that by the time the Biden administration was wrapping up its time, it was essentially a fait accompli that the regime had repressed its way out of this challenge, even though the emperor, so to speak, has no clothes at this point. Everybody knows he's illegitimate. Many around the world refer to him as such.
Right.
And this is his legitimacy question that's constantly hanging over his head. Nevertheless, he maintains, control of the security apparatus and many of the levers of power in Venezuela.
What does it mean for Venezuela that Maria Corina Machado won the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Maria Corina Machado. We've had her 3 times at CSIS. She's a remarkable woman, and it was a great choice, in my opinion, by the committee. I think it does 3 things concretely. I think, first and foremost, it refocuses the world's attention, as difficult as that might be, given all of the competing places where you could put your eyeballs. It focuses it on Venezuela once again, at least partially, and on the crisis there, the repression that's taking place, and the fact that this country, as you all have mentioned in this interview, has great potential, and it was at one point the erstwhile wealthiest country in the region and has fallen so far. Second, I think it makes Machado herself even more untouchable within the country. It would be a very bad day for Maduro to go and arrest the Nobel Prize winner, which he's wanted to do for a long time. And third, I think it lends a little bit of credibility to what the Trump administration is trying to do, which is to find other forms of pressure that haven't been used yet in the toolkit to actually resolve this situation, which is creating so much crisis, so much disorder, so much chaos within Latin America as an entire region, right? What happens in Venezuela doesn't just stay in Venezuela. That's the challenge here.
Right.
We're not just talking about the 8 million who have left. Criminal networks emanating from Venezuela, corruption schemes, all sort of illicit financing of other countries' elections. A lot happens in Venezuela that doesn't stay there. So it's really in the interest of the entire region, I believe, to have this issue resolved and to get to a democratic transition or a regime collapse in Venezuela.
We have just about 30 seconds before we go to break. We're going to be coming back with more from Ryan Berg here in just a moment. He is the director of the Americas program and head of the Future of Venezuela Initiative at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Follow him on X at Ryan Berg, PhD. Ryan, when we come back, I want to hit a little bit on a point you just made, which is about the involvement of the other Latin American countries, particularly Mexico, in this process, and if there is a way to leverage those countries to help affect regime change that they may not want to see. So we're going to be coming back with more here at Breaking Battlegrounds in just one moment.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're talking now with Ryan Berg, Director of the Americas Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We've been discussing Venezuela. Ryan, right before we went to break, you mentioned the role some of the other Latin American countries, particularly Mexico and others, have played in the negotiations or in the process of trying now to potentially, create regime change in Venezuela. Are those countries our ally in that, or are they more interested in propping up a fellow leftist regime against what is likely to be a right-wing kickback?
So when Claudia Sheinbaum, the current president of Mexico, was asked what she thought of Maria Corina Machado winning the Nobel Peace Prize, her comment was, no comment. So I think that says everything you need to know, or for our listeners, that says everything they need to know about where Mexico stands in a potential transition in Venezuela. That said, Mexico is under tremendous pressure to deliver on their own domestic security for the United States, and the Trump administration is pushing more and more for that on a daily basis. So Mexico, even though it is not going to be a strong ally and partner in getting to a potential regime collapse or regime change in Venezuela, will, I think, at least step back, focus on its own domestic issues, and not necessarily be a barrier in that sense. There are other countries in the region that I would highlight as being far more in favor of the very large naval deployment in the Southern Caribbean. There's Trinidad and Tobago, which has been very vocal and in favor of this. There's Guyana, there's Jamaica. Those are Caribbean countries, the Dominican Republic, Peru, Ecuador, Paraguay, Argentina. They've been strong supporters in South America. And some of those countries within the last month have actually declared the Tren de Aragua and the Cartel de los Soles to be foreign terrorist organizations, just as the United States has. So there's a lot of synchronization or harmonization of the approach going on here, even if Mexico isn't our best partner in this endeavor.
By the way, this is totally different than what we've been discussing, but I really think Mexico's president handles Donald Trump quite well. Is that a fair? We talked about this a lot, and I think it's because in Mexico she's dealt with a lot of alphas, and she just seems to not overreact to him, which I think a lot of world leaders could learn a lot from how she reacts and communicates with him. Your thoughts?
Well, she has described her strategy as cabeza fria, cold head, or rational mindset. Right. Don't let the temperature rise too much, and try to have a level-headed dialogue. And it seems to me that President Trump really enjoys his conversations with her. He's said some very positive things about her as a person, even if they haven't met yet in person, because they've had a number of productive phone calls. I think somewhere in the range of 14 to 16 phone calls at this point. So I think that she is handling the situation well, but make no mistake, she's delivering as well. She's under tremendous pressure to deliver. The economy in Mexico is not doing particularly well, something around 0.3 or 0.4% growth expected for this year. Mexico needs much, much higher to be able to meet its fiscal and policy goals. And so they're under a lot of pressure to deliver more interdiction, more security gains, and less migration to the southern border. And so far, they've delivered that, but I would argue a lot of it is because of the pressure and the incentive structure that the U.S. has put before Mexico.
What do you think about Trump authorizing covert CIA action in Venezuela? And do we really have the assets to do covert CIA action in Venezuela?
Well, I think that we should be honest about the fact that there has been covert action in Venezuela for a while. So what we got yesterday from the New York Times report was just an indication that the president has done what's called a presidential finding, which kind of opens up new avenues of potential CIA action. There was one of these in the first Trump administration. I believe there was also CIA action under the Biden administration, or potential CIA action in Venezuela. So it isn't that big of a set of news items. It's more what are we going to be willing to do with this presidential finding that we might not have been able or willing to do in the first Trump administration or in the Biden administration. This has been publicly reported. It's nothing that I'm sharing on the high side, on the top secret side here. But Wired magazine did a really interesting piece last year on CIA ideas that were almost implemented in the first Trump administration. And frankly, gentlemen, there were some really good ideas, including ways to prevent the military from getting paid unless they flip sides or played a productive part in a peaceful democratic transition. That was just one of them that I remember off the top of my head, which seemed, if it could be executed well, like quite a good idea. They simply didn't do it, right? And so the real question now is, how far are we willing to go with this presidential finding, not necessarily the revelation that the CIA could be active in Venezuela.
Ryan, let's say we did go far enough and we created a more stable, call it regime change, call it just a more stable Venezuela out of this situation. What would be the benefit to the U.S.?
Well, I think there would be tremendous benefits to the U.S. and it would redound across the region. I think for many of the greatest concerns that we have about Latin America, Venezuela is at its center, right? And so if you think about the Trump administration's priorities, you've got counter narcotics, you've got migration, you've got China, right? We obviously know the 8 million people who have left Venezuela. We know right now that the press is on the Maduro regime because of its connection to drug trafficking. And we know over the last decade and a half, how much that regime has become involved in other illicit economies as well. And then the China issue, no country has received more money in the Western Hemisphere than Venezuela. No country has had its leaders travel to China more than Venezuela. Venezuela, in many ways, is kind of the beachhead for great power rivals or medium power rivals like a Russia or an Iran to set up in America's shared neighborhood. So having a government in power in Venezuela that not only helps with the security side of things, but also realigns Venezuela to become a more Western Hemisphere country, less China, less Russia, less Iran, that would redound, I think, not just to the United States, but also to the broader region as well.
We have just about a minute and a half left here. You brought up something I hadn't really thought of. Is the Chinese Ministry of State Security playing on the opposite side of the field as the CIA in Venezuela right now? Like, is this their quiet, dark little battlefield?
I'm going to speculate here with my answer because I don't have a firm facts-based answer for you on this one, but I think that China is pretty much fed up with Venezuela at this point. They've lent something in the range of $62 to $64 billion to Venezuela over the years. It's more than half of all the money they've lent to Latin America, and they got burned, right? A lot of that money got siphoned off, funneled into corruption schemes. A lot of the infrastructure that was supposed to be built was never brought to fruition. They have gotten burned and they understand it. But rather than favor a democratic transition where they could get repaid, they'd rather have this festering cancer that is Chavismo in our own shared neighborhood than get repaid in, say, 5 or 10 years if there was a democratic transition. And so they're willing to have the outstanding debt in favor of America having a problem in its own shared neighborhood rather than actually playing a constructive solution. But it should be noted that each of the last couple times Maduro has gone to China to ask for things, he's come back empty-handed. He has not gotten the sort of monetary or security commitment he expected.
Interesting.
Well, that makes me happy, Chuck.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be coming back with more from Ryan Berg here in just a moment, folks. Stay tuned for that. And you're also going to want to stay tuned for our next guest, Mark Geist. Mark Geist, member of the enact security team that fought in the Battle of Benghazi, working on a very important initiative in Colorado right now. So stay tuned for that. Lots of good stuff coming up on Breaking Battlegrounds, including Kylie's Corner today. Coming right back.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Continuing on now with Ryan Berg, Director of the Americas Program and Head of the Future of Venezuela Initiative at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Follow him on X at Ryan Berg, PhD.
Ryan, when we post on social media, the things that really get a lot of attention for, we have about 150 million engagements a month, is anything on Iran and the Monroe Doctrine really gets a lot of engagement and likes. This seems to be a very MAGA thing. This is our backyard. Stay out of our backyard.
That is so MAGA.
Yeah, it's just, it's America
perfect.
first is the Monroe Doctrine. How do you see that, and how do you think the Trump administration sees that?
Well, I think that the general precepts of the Monroe Doctrine are still very much guiding principle for the United States, but also for this administration. And what this administration is doing is bringing our attention back to the Americas in a way that many administrations in the past haven't. The reporting on the National Defense Strategy document and the National Security Strategy document, which should be released in short order here, basically indicate that the Western Hemisphere is going to take a pride of place. And when I teach my university students over at Catholic University, we do IR 101, and IR 101 is that you can't be a globally influential power unless you're a regionally influential power. And I think the administration feels as though we've been for 20 years and under various administrations of both parties focused on other geographies of the world and other issues, and that has accrued to China's benefit mostly in our own shared neighborhood. And so we need to come back closer to home and focus on cleaning up some of those issues in order to then accrue more global influence, more capability of being able to focus on issues in other theaters of the world. I think it's sound foreign policy. I think there's a good reason to swing our attention back to the Western Hemisphere, potentially make it a co-equal concern with the great power competition with China. And I'm looking forward to seeing the national defense strategy and national security strategy operationalize much of that instinct.
I would tend to agree that it is high time that the U.S. re-engages as the central authority or central figure throughout the Americas. But I wonder, from what you're seeing, if the Trump administration is doing enough to get buy-in from our international partners around the globe and the understanding that we cannot be stretched to every corner of the globe. In other words, we have crises in Ukraine. We have the situation still in Gaza and Israel. You have China moving in the east. We have Latin America we're dealing with. At some point, our focus has to be narrowed to be effective, and our partners have to step up. Are they really getting that message across?
Well, I think there's still a way to go, and I think we need to articulate, of course, how we want partners to complement some of our strategies. I mean, and there's even room for partners in Latin America, for example. There might be areas where we want to compete with China, but frankly, we don't offer a particularly good alternative. And we should welcome that a European or a Canadian or a Japanese or South Korean company would play that role instead if there isn't an American company, just that it's not a PRC or even worse, PRC state-owned enterprise building out, say, the infrastructure or doing the partnerships on ICT infrastructure or on cloud computing or AI, whatever the issue might be where we want to compete. I think we need to be clearer about where partners can complement some of those U.S. instincts to compete. I think that's some of the next steps in articulating this interest in the Western Hemisphere, figuring out which kind of gaps partners can fill and ultimately complement U.S. policy.
Ryan, we have about 2 minutes left here. What countries in Latin America do you see have the highest potential for a good, solid relationship for the United States during the Trump years? Who are those countries? Argentina, who else?
Yeah, I think the region is going to look incredibly different, gentlemen, in about 3 months to 9 months. So you've got a series of elections coming up where, in my opinion, they're change elections. Migration and security are some of the top issues in all those places. And the right is favored to win in pretty much all of them. So you've got Chilean elections coming up before the end of the year. You have elections in Honduras. You have elections next year in Peru. You'll have elections next year in Colombia. And you'll have elections next year in Brazil. All of those elections could bring to power center-right presidents who would have great relationships with Washington and want to deepen those partnerships. So in many ways, the door is actually opening wider as opposed to closing on some of those partnership questions. Whereas now we're focused on Argentina, Paraguay, El Salvador. We may be focusing on a much wider set of countries in 2026 as new leaders come to power.
Ryan Berg, we thank you so much for joining us today. We very much appreciate having you on the program. We'll look forward to having you back here in the near future. Folks, follow him on X at Ryan Berg, PhD. He is the director of the Americas Program and head of the Future of Venezuela Initiative at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, an org that Chuck and I are big fans of and that does great work. You should be tuning in and following them as well. Breaking Battlegrounds will be coming back here in just one moment.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our next guest up today, Mark Oz Geist, a member of the annex security team that fought in the Battle of Benghazi. Really hung out to dry by Hillary Clinton. After serving 12 years in the United States Marine Corps, he became a deputy sheriff in Teller County, Colorado, where he led a task force dedicated to combating crimes against children. Today, he serves as the chair of Colorado's Protect Our Children initiative against child sex trafficking, advancing voter-enacted common sense protections to keep kids safe. You can follow him on X at Mark Geist, SWP.
Mark, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So tell us, why is the initiative for Colorado Protect Children from Child Sex Trafficking important? And what did you see as a deputy sheriff with this?
Well, for 3 years I worked. I didn't lead the task force. It was a group task force that focused crimes against children and crimes against family. And, it's the Lord blessed me with the ability to get kids to tell me stuff they should never have to tell anyone. And you hear these stories that they have to go through. And we have an obligation. I mean, my faith in Jesus Christ, and Christ says, protect our children. That's what we have to do. And that's what really focuses me and leads me into this ballot initiative.
Mark, how big of a problem is it?
A lot bigger than what most people think. I can guarantee you, in some form or manner, a child is being trafficked in every city or town across this country. And it's sometimes in ways that we don't think that it's trafficking, but it is. Because anytime there is either money or something of value traded for that child, that is that's trafficking a child for sex.
And the problem, Mark, as you've experienced, is far more complex than people seem to understand, right? It's not just like, say, foreign national organizations that are trafficking a large number of women from other countries, but you have folks and networks here that are picking up runaways at shelters and bus stops that are grooming children in schools. There's a lot of avenues that they're bringing these kids into this horror from, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've dealt with cases where it was a stepfather who the biological father of the girl was not in the picture. The mother had passed away, so the stepfather had custody. She was, I think, 13, 14 years old. He never did anything to perpetrate on that child. But what he would do is have her bring her friends over, provide him alcohol, and then have his friends come over and pay him to have sex with these girls.
Oh, my God.
That's trafficking.
Yes, yes. So what does the initiative Protect Children from Child Sex Trafficking do? If it passes in Colorado, what does that mean?
It means that if you get convicted of this crime, you are going to go to prison for life without parole.
And what are the current laws regarding sex trafficking? What is the maximum and so forth? Right now there's no life. There used to be, and then it was parole was added to it. So if someone gets convicted of a sex crime on a child, whether it be trafficking or just perping themselves, they would go to prison. It would be a life sentence, but the sentence would be they would be out on parole once they completed the therapy programs that are provided for them to try to fix what's wrong with them. And in state prison here in Colorado, every day that you do that's good, you get a day off of your sentence. Now you'll be out on parole because you still have to complete that. Correct.
But and theoretically, you're supposed to register as a sex offender and make sure that there's check-ins and things like that. But the people that monitor that at the state level, a lot of that funding has been reduced, so there's not enough people to even monitor those that are out on sex crimes.
Well, and one of the reasons for this initiative and others like it that are working across the country right now is this entire idea of, quote, restorative justice, unquote, has just gotten totally out of control. And you have judges across the country, including in Colorado, who are letting child sex traffickers and rapists free with minimal sentences.
Yes. And there need to be, that's why I chose to push this, why we chose to push this, and because it needs to be mandated that it is a life in prison without parole. And now that doesn't take away from the governor having the ability to pardon, because we don't want to mess with that. There's a whole reason for that. But we have to protect our kids. We have to do it here in Colorado. We have to do it across this country.
So you have seen a lot in your life, from Marines for 12 years, deputy sheriff. Can these kids, when this happens to them, can they recover? And then my follow-up question is, how did you handle it dealing with this issue? Because this goes home with you. It's not like you shut it off at 5 o'clock. So could you talk to us how that does it and how personal this issue is for you?
Well, you can fix you can through counseling and through, a lot of therapy, things like that. You can repair the damage that's done to these kids. And a lot of that is also through, for me, it's through my faith in Jesus Christ. All of the things that I've seen and done in my life, both in the military, in law enforcement, as a private contractor, friends that I've lost, damage that's been happened to me. It's through my faith that really is what gets me through that. And, when I was working crimes against children, it was really probably the most satisfying job I got to do, because I was blessed with the ability to protect these kids and make their life better. And I can't think of a better thing to have, or a better purpose in my life than to protect the most vulnerable that we have in this society.
Do you ever follow up just quietly with the kids that you've rescued and see where they are in their life?
No, it's, I don't do that unless they would reach out and find me. And, most of them probably would have never done that until after Benghazi, when I become a public figure. But, I don't mind and wouldn't mind knowing where they're at and how they're doing, but I leave that up to them. That's not something that I would try to push on them, because I don't know where they're at after they're, in their life journey.
Right.
Mark, when I was working at the city of Phoenix, I met the officer. They had one particular officer in Phoenix PD who was assigned to do the interviews with all the child sex traffickers, with the people who were accused of child rape. And I came away from that thinking this man is a saint who has the worst job in history. one I could never do. Did you do those type of interviews, and how difficult is that? Because what he was talking about is he said, I have to get into their trust. I have to make them think that I am with them to get them to start talking. And that just seemed to me to be an unbelievable piece of mental gymnastics for a decent human to do.
I got to give some of it to the Marine Corps, because my last 5 or 6 years in the Marine Corps, I was a interrogator translator. So I've been, my background in interrogation, I've interrogated, some of the worst people in the world, but as both in the military and in law enforcement. And he's right, it's a game, and my interrogations would start before the person would ever even become in custody. I would start it from a distance, and because the type of people that do this kind of crime are very, what's the word I'm like? They're just very confident in their ability to manipulate people.
Right.
And if you know what their strengths are, you could use those strengths against them, because it can become their weakness, because their arrogance and their ability to manipulate is something that they really try to use. And I would just try to turn that around and use that against them. And it would start from when because I typically wouldn't go arrest them. I would invite them in to come in for an interview and sit down and have a talk with me, because I've had this report of something that I need to figure out and get to the bottom of. And they think they can manipulate me. And that's what would really draw them in. And if they would agree to come in, then it's a non-custodial interview. As a non-custodial interview, I don't have to read them their rights, because they're not under arrest, and I'm not going to arrest them immediately after. And I can say probably 99% of the time, if they started talking and come in and sat down with me, I could get a confession out of them.
Mark, tell people, our audience, how can they get involved and protect children from child sex trafficking and get this on the ballot in Colorado?
There's 3 things that we're asking people to do. If you are here in the state of Colorado, what we need you to do is to go to protectkidscolorado.com. Make sure, protectkidscolorado.com. And there you have a couple choices. You can either donate and help fund this, because it's going to take a lot of money, because the left is going to fight against it. Once we get this on the ballot, and that's our challenge right now. And we are just about halfway there to our goal of 200,000 signatures. We've got about 100,000 right now. And not only on this ballot initiative, on 2 other ballot initiatives that are being chaired by 2 ladies that are partnering with me to protect our kids here in Colorado. And doing that, the first thing is we need signatures.
Right.
And it's not like the signature person that you see at the grocery store. Everybody, if you have 10 to 40 friends that you know, whether they're close or distance, go to protectkidscolorado.com, ask to be a signature gatherer, and go to your friends and ask them. Go to where you shop, those friends that are intermittent friends, get them to sign up. That's all we need. If we have 10,000 people signing up, 40 people, we're gonna it's that simple. The math works.
Does Colorado
the thing? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Does Colorado have an online signature portal? Do they allow digital signatures on these?
No, they don't. It has to be, and that's why the amount of signatures we actually need isn't 200,000, but we got to have 200,000 to make sure that they are perfect, because they're going to go through an audit phase of, is it legible? Is
Right.
it verified that the person is a citizen of Colorado? And are they able to vote in Colorado? And are they at the right address? And all of that comes in. And if there's any little malfunctions to that or mishaps to that, that signature can get thrown out. So we're really trying to get probably 30%, 40% more signatures than we actually need. And the other thing that does is it also shows everyone in the state that the people of Colorado, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, you don't have to believe in the same politics that I have, but I think we can all believe that we need to protect our children.
When's the deadline for the signatures?
The deadline for the signatures, I think we're 2.5 months into it. I think we got another 3 months. So we're looking November, December, probably January is where we have to have all signatures in.
Yeah.
We really want to get it done right now. We want to get it done before Thanksgiving. And again, to show everybody that, you know what, despite any differences we have, Coloradoans want to protect our children.
To me, Chuck, this seems like the most common sense stuff in the world, these Colorado initiatives.
Correct.
If you're against this, you're really against humanity.
Oh,
I mean, that's what it comes down to. We really do have gone off the deep end when it comes to allowing criminals to prey on innocents and on our children in this society, and it's got to stop. We can't thank Mark Geist enough, all of the people who are working on this initiative. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back here on the podcast again in the future. This is an issue, folks. Go to the website. Chuck, what's the website? I'm blanking on it here.
It's protectourchildrenamerica.com.
Protectourchildrenamerica.com. Go there right now. Contribute. See what you can do to help these guys get across the finish line.
And if you have friends and family in Colorado, call them up and tell them to gather signatures. That we need everybody on this to protect kids.
Yeah,
Amen.
You can gather your own signature and your spouse.
That's
right?
exactly right.
Right? Start right there. Charity starts at home. Protect the kids. Folks, Breaking Battlegrounds is going to be back on the air next week, but if you're not already, go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote, go to Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Get downloaded because you don't want to miss Kylie's Corner. You don't want to miss all the great content we have coming up for you. Breaking Battlegrounds, back next week.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With the yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. We're going to be doing a Kylie's Corner coming up here, but first, getting a little good financial advice. Welcome back to the show, Gary Gygi, seasoned financial expert, former mayor, and president of Gygi Capital Management. Check them out at gigicapital.com.
Good morning, guys.
Morning. Gary, there's a gold rally. And
Yes, there is.
what does that mean to investments?
It's like a gold
retirement,
volcano.
currency, all that stuff?
Yeah, so this is super interesting, is that when you talk about gold, I really think you need to be talking about the currency at the same time, because all things being equal, if you have a strong currency, typically you're going to have a weak gold price. If you have a weak currency, you're going to have a strong gold price. That, at least historically, that's the way it's been. And so this year, we've had a slightly weaker dollar, and we've had a gold rally. And so if you take a look at historically who buys gold, then I think this really adds to our conversation, because you got certain countries, for instance, India.
Correct.
They buy a lot of gold for jewelry purposes. In the US, if you are an investor, you're typically buying gold as a hedge against inflation, or maybe a concern that the economy is weakening. And so that's changed a little bit over the last 3 or 4 years, because central banks are getting more involved. And so they all seem to have a similar approach that, or at least some of them have a similar approach as President Trump does, which is President Trump has been jawboning the Fed to lower interest rates. And one of his reasons for doing that is that it will help service our debt.
Right.
So he's right about that. But that's also part of the reason why we've had a weak currency is when foreign countries, foreign investors take a look at the US and they go, okay, you're not taking your debt seriously. You're not taking your deficit spending seriously. Therefore, we're less likely to bring our money to the US and invest it.
But
And
but
so,
but Gary, let me ask you this question.
yeah,
So the dollar has rebounded the past month, correct?
correct.
Okay. What country in the world is taking their debt seriously?
And so there's a lot of countries that are not taking their debt seriously. But where I was going with this is that if you take a look at the last 3 years, there's two countries in particular that are buying gold because gold is not subject to tariffs and it's not subject to sanctions. Those
Okay.
two countries are China and Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're interested or they're concerned about sanctions and tariffs. So they're buying gold in place of buying as much of the dollars as they used to. So I think that's what's going on there is there's a gold rally that's going on, not just because we've had a weaker dollar this year, despite the fact that it's rallied over the last month, but you've got central banks like Russia and China that are buying gold and they view it as being protected against sanctions or tariffs.
Gary, so I want to tie something you're talking about to something else here because gold obviously has an increasing commodities market for manufacturing because it's needed in all sorts of devices that are manufactured here in China and elsewhere. Then you add in these central banks and others starting to get into the gold market in a significant way. Does that diminish gold's value as an economic indicator? In other words, historically, if gold's rising like crazy, you're facing collapse in a lot of areas. You may be facing collapse in areas of your economy. I've heard a lot of people kind of pointing to the rise in gold over the last couple of years and saying this disaster's coming. I'm wondering if these factors aren't decoupling gold from that historical norm a little bit.
Yeah, I think that they are. That was my point, Sam, is that, and I would just respectfully differentiate a little bit of the words you're talking about, which is that silver has a lot of industrial uses. Gold does not have as many industrial uses as silver. So I do see silver being used in a ton of manufacturing capabilities. Gold primarily is still a jewelry or a hedge in terms of investment purposes, but that decoupling I think is taking place in terms of particularly Russia and China buying less dollars, buying more gold because it can't be sanctioned.
How is the U.S. gold reserve? How are we with that?
You know, that's one of the things that's people are concerned about because they really don't know because the U.S. currency is not backed up by
Right.
anything other than the good faith and credit of the U.S. government. It's not backed up by gold. There's a lot of people that would love us to go back on the gold standards to back up the dollars. But right now, our dollar is not backed up by anything other than the good faith and credit of the U.S.
The good faith and credit and the GDP, right?
Gary,
And just keep it rolling.
We asked this question before we close with you, and I want your opinion. You know, our debt is so big, but so is also our economy, right? There's nothing comparable to it, really. I know everybody likes to talk about China, but we really are still number one in many, many ways.
Sure.
What does the U.S. government need to do to show the markets that we're serious about debt? But I don't see in your and my lifetime, Gary, paying $34 trillion debt. But what is a fiscal policy we need to have going forward that will calm the markets, that we're still a safe haven for investments, that our promises, our guarantees mean something? Is that just simply making sure we balance our budget every year and slowly pay it off a little bit at a time? I mean, what do you think does that for the markets?
So for right now, the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency in the world. Before World War II, it was the British pound. It's been the U.S. dollar since then. So people still view this as the most reliable currency. However, and maybe this is a big however. I do think that gold is having different purposes, and so Chuck, what was your question again?
What is the fiscal? The United States is not going to pay $34 trillion
fiscal
off.
policy.
So what's the fiscal policy to make the markets feel good that we take our fiscal responsibility seriously?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that for a second. I think it's simple, you guys. I think that the markets would love to see spending under control. So every time that the Republicans lower tax rates for everyone, the media and Democrats their heads blow up because they don't want to do that, and what should happen at the same time as we are lowering tax rates is we should be cutting spending, because if you keep spending the same but yet you lower tax rates, you're going to have your budget deficit increase. So this is something that no administration has been willing to do seriously for a very, very long time, which is that if you want the markets to take the U.S. seriously in terms of us addressing our debt plus our deficit spending, they need to get spending under control. They need to stop deficit spending. So in addition to paying down our debt, they need to be spending less than what we're taking in every year. I think there's a lot of fiscal hawks that would love to see that happen. I know that there's a lot of investors that would love for that to happen as well. So that is the solution, I think, you guys.
Even Gary, you and I aren't running for governor or Congress in our life now. My question for you is this. Do you see a way, besides cutting or limiting growth in various agencies and programs, do you see any way we can do this without somehow raising some taxes somewhere?
Yeah, because I don't think it's a government income thing. Every time that we, as a government, lower tax rates, the revenue just flows in, but we haven't been able to control the spending. So I think it is completely 100% a spending problem in Washington, D.C. And if they controlled spending, I think that solves a lot of problems.
Well, and realistically, if you're growing the economy at 4%, and you're running a 2% deficit, that works too, right? I mean, fundamentally, as long as they cut the growth of government spending below the level of the economic growth, we would make the gains that the market would probably react very positively to.
Right.
They would. So that would be, so the math works that way. If your GDP is growing at 4% and you're only at 2%, then yes, the math works. I think the markets would like that.
Gary Gygi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. How do folks get in touch with you and find a very good manager for their finances and for their family's future?
They can go to our website, which is gygicapital.com, GYGI capital.com. They can also call us at 801-787-0342. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate you
Appreciate
having me on.
Gary Gygi,
Thanks, pal. See
always
ya.
love talking to you. All right, so we have a Kylie's Corner for today. I was missing it last week.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I was missing it.
I know.
I mean,
there's lots of good things going on. Well, I don't know if I
there's
can call them good things,
so
but-
much. There is not good things.
Yeah, not good things.
There have been so many Kylie's Corner things in the
Kylie
news the
Corners.
last couple of weeks.
Good things to discuss.
Yes.
Topics. I think I'm digging myself in a hole.
People
Let's
are
play my
tuning-
music.
People are tuning in. Let's go.
Crimes and the ones committed, murder and mayhem in a world of sin and oh, Kylie's on a roll. Kylie's got a corner and she's gonna start spilling out all the true crime in the world we're living in. So come and take a spin and listen in.
Okay, so first I'll share the story about what happened in Italy, and then we'll get to Brazil. So lots of crazy things are happening.
This is an international flavor show today.
Yeah, International Kylie's Corner. So first, there was a supermodel in Italy. Her name's Pamela Gini, and she's 29 years old, and she was dating a guy who's 52, Gianluca. And she was coming home one night, and she was talking to an ex on the phone. And it's unclear if they were still together or if he was an ex, and they were meeting up together. However, when she got there, he got angry and stabbed her 24 times.
Oh my gosh.
On the balcony, and neighbors and people outside heard screams, called the cops. And when the cops arrived, Gianluca decided he was going to try to stab himself in the neck. And so he started to stab himself, but he did survive. So he's going to be charged with this crime.
It's pretty hard to really stab yourself in the neck and finish the job, I think.
I mean, if you get the carotid the first time, I suppose it's not.
But
I mean,
people are nervous, their hands shaking.
yeah, I'm not. I have never really contemplated stabbing myself, so
Anyway.
not sure where to go with that one. But okay, I mean, that's horrid.
Yeah, I just find it comical
That
that he
is-
survived and now will still face his crimes and was in pain.
Yeah, of all the crimes, like I sort of get somebody shooting someone a lot more than stabbing them 24 times.
Stabbing is passion.
Yeah,
like-
strangling is stabbing someone's
Right.
passion.
Like,
24
that's like you
times,
gotta-
you are mad.
You are in a rage.
Yeah, that's scary. But speaking of rage,
Okay,
I'm going to flip.
We
the
got
ro-
more.
Yeah, we're in Brazil now, and I'm
Okay.
going to flip the roles. Now, our perpetrator is Ana Fernandez. She's a 36-year-old law student and mom.
Well, look, the minute you said we were going to Brazil, the flipping of the roles was presumed.
And so I had AI translate Brazil newspapers to try to understand how this case first went cold and then, not cold, but they closed it with not enough evidence. So she had an altercation with her landlord and ended up stabbing him on the couch. Blood got everywhere. She burned the couch and then kept his body in her house for 5 days until her son and nephew who lived with her complained about the smell and the maggots.
Ooh.
To which then she called the cops, And I don't know if she said, I have a dead body. I don't know how she explained on how this dead body got here.
Yeah. Wow.
But the authorities the case was closed due to lack of evidence. So I don't know how there was anything of lack of evidence there.
What?
Yes.
Hi, I have a 5-day decomposing body in my house that I stabbed to death, but there's no evidence.
Yes, but it goes on. So after this, then they start to connect 3 other cases to this one case. So 3 cases, everyone died from turbufos, I think. It's a banned pesticide. And the first one was Maria. This happened in April of this year. And a woman named Maria, she died eating a cake after visiting Anna's home. She then took Maria's phone, Anna, and was texting her boyfriend, who was a cop, trying to frame it like she was mad at the cop, and then left notes to try to frame like it was the cop. She then called the authorities that there was this person dead in her house. Okay, so she's also the one that reported that dead body. Also in April, a man named Neil was at her house eating another meal. He died. And he's like, stop eating Anna's meals, you know? But police believed that Neil's daughter actually paid Anna to kill her because they were working on their law thesis together and would conceal their payments based on tutoring verbiage. So they would pretend like, oh, she's paying for a tutor, but really it was payments to kill Neil, her father. Then,
oh my gosh.
So both these happened in April. And then in May, she was also dating a 21-year-old. She was 35, dating a 21-year-old little boyfriend.
So she's the definition of a cougar.
Yep. And she was like, hey, I'm pregnant. And he was like, I'm out. I don't want this. So he tried to leave her.
He's
Yeah.
21.
She also wasn't pregnant. She was lying.
I think you need to DNA swab every cop who's come in contact with this woman because I have suspicions.
And then they broke up, and she decided to give him a milkshake, and he died after drinking the milkshake. And she also called the cops on him. So she's the one that called the cops on all 4 murders now.
I think regardless of where on this planet you live, not taking food and drink from someone you've just broken up with is probably a wise precaution.
I wonder how she pitched the milkshake. But people are calling this...
Way to kill me, you know that.
Oh, he loves milkshakes, literally. But they're calling this the glamorous serial killer because she's, to the internet, relatively attractive woman. I'll show you guys.
Oh, yeah, she's hot.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, people would find her attractive. Yeah.
So people think she's actually just misunderstood. And there's other things in her life that are causing her to do these murders. But the cops are saying, no, she's just cold and manipulative.
Don't you love when you've researched all these fan clubs these killers get and people trying to justify it?
I just I really don't understand.
It's weird, right?
Writing them in, I was actually in because I love.
Well,
I'm
but
in the comments.
maybe for the future we should try to find one of those people and get them on this.
Honestly, we should because
this and ask.
I like to be in the comments. I like to read the comments. That's where the good juicy stuff is on the internet. And anytime TMZ posts something,
and you do find out in the comments how funny some people are.
Yeah, you do.
There's some really funny people in the world.
But what always amazes me is. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? The guy who shot the healthcare worker over in New York.
Oh, yeah, Luigi.
Luigi. the amount of people that comment saying, "Oh, I donated to him," because there was like this article that was like, "Oh, he's living large," and someone's like, "I donated, like so many," and it's just.
I don't understand at all. I think we should.
It's
get
insane.
One of these people on the program though, and be like, "What is your?
What's the?" Or even like someone that dates.
Yeah.
Someone like that.
Well, how many of these guys get married in jail if some of they met
A
right?
lot.
Too many.
Yeah.
Like, when's Brian Kober going to announce his first marriage?
Oh, I assume like tomorrow.
And it's going to be some nerdy white woman.
Yeah.
Who studies crime.
Yes.
And Sam probably has.
Got to keep an eye on them. Maybe that could be my task force. I keep an eye on because there must be something going on.
There must be something going on
up in the membrane.
I would agree.
I'm gonna see something. I'm gonna ask you right now. How many male inmates get married in prison?
I'll post the image of the glamorous serial killer, Brazilian serial killer. What this reminded me when
16 to 26% of male inmates in state and federal prisons get married.
16%?
Yep.
It's kind of a lot.
Well, yeah, that's it. It goes to our whole point. What we're talking about.
Yeah, this is not some minor phenomenon.
It's not like one person, right?
Yeah. Wait, I did have to look up because I think last year, 2024, December of 24, I talked about the Brazilian Christmas Eve cake. So I probably did it in January of this year. There was a Christmas Eve cake that killed the whole family in Brazil.
Yes.
And it was because it was laced with arsenic, but there was no connection with Anna. So there's just a different poisonous killer out there putting it in their cake.
We can make it one if we want to.
There's just, if you're in Brazil, just careful about the cake down there.
So our international flavor show today took us from Venezuela, Argentina, Italy, and Brazil.
Worldwide, Breaking Battlegrounds.
There's some like rat poison that famously tastes like marzipan.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
And poison's really hard to prove because there's so many types of poison out there, and when someone dies, you only get a certain amount of their blood, so you can only test a certain amount of the poisons. So you have to know exactly what it is. But she left it, luckily, in her home, so they knew.
Before we close today, Sam, I want to know if you both agree with me. I think Republicans just need to ignore the No Kings protests. Now, America's had one forever. It's called July 4th, but which is funny because this is Democrats doing this primarily. It's not all Democrats, but it's Democrats primarily doing this, and only 36% of Democrats are proud of America. So obviously, let's skip July 4th and do this. But as I see Secretary Duffy come on and Carolyn Leavitt, just shut up. Just let them go do their protests and ignore them. I mean, they're a bunch of zeros to begin with. They're
actually not only would I ignore them, I would step back. I
just let them do it.
I hate to say, yeah.
I mean, this is America. Let them protest all you want.
Well, I'm actually going to go a step further. Let them be as awful, property destructing, burning, everything. Let them show this country again what they really are.
My favorite is
you can't gather 10,000 of them anywhere without murders.
The editor of the Grifting Bulwark, Charlie Skies, is on Matt Lewis and said, make sure you bring your American flag. So they have to remind these people to bring their American flag. So anyway, Republicans out there, don't engage on social media. Just let them have their weekend. They're not worth your time. This is America. Anybody can protest. I'm all for it. There should be nobody trying to stop them. Just do it.
Here's the thing. You can take heart in not being involved with this because leftists are so awful these days that when you gather them all up together, it's a hideous experience for everyone involved. So leave them to their own self-made hideousness.
And this is that is a very good point. And one other point. Since this is a No King protest, just allowing them to protest disproves their whole point.
Right.
So let them go do it. Let them have a day. And I hope all you fast food people and stuff make a lot of money that day.
Oh, yeah. I think the weed stores will do well.
Oh, we should probably. Is that next weekend, by the way?
What, the protests?
Yeah, no
I thought it was like this weekend.
Yeah, I thought it was tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's like tomorrow. I think but people will be listening to this while these idiots are
to sell donuts or something and make some money. All right, folks. On behalf of Jeremy, Kylie, Sam, and myself, and our wonderful guest today, thanks for joining us on Breaking Battlegrounds. You can find us at breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Please subscribe to our Substack. We always have great information there. And wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, yada yada. Have a great weekend.